We just had prayer before we entered the call. We apologize for being delayed. It's all my fault, although I wasn't flying the plane, but it still is all my fault. It's good. It's good to see everyone. We have a good panel discussion for you this evening. We have Deacon Jack Harris and Brothers Todd Riddick. Then we're going to talk about ventures in real estate. That's ventures in real estate. So if you have the ability to do so, if you would please share, let folks know that we're here. You may know somebody that's trying to get into real estate, start their own business, do something a little different. And this endemic hopefully is taking folks into thinking about new ways to do things and new ways and new ventures to get into. And we have two gentlemen tonight that are very well versed in this. So we're going to talk a bit again about avenues in real estate. And again, we have Deacon Jack Harris next to me, and below me, Brother Todd Riddick. Thank you, gentlemen. How are we both doing this evening?
Very
Oh,
good.
good,
Thank you for
man.
having me, Rich. I appreciate it. Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. We talk on the phone and text, but I don't ever get to really lay eyes on you. So it's nice to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and,
good to
and
see
Jack,
you, brother.
Jack look like you still
Amen.
in the office
Yeah, I
grinding.
am, man. I am. And I said, for me to try to leave and get home and the time it wouldn't work. So I just figured I'd stay here. And then when I got done, I can go home and eat. So I told Todd if he see me nibbling on this water,
Well, I'm in the
it's
same
all
boat.
good though.
I'm
Yeah,
in the
it's all
same boat
good.
with you, Jack. But it's all good. And
That's the nature of
we're
the business, man. I'm thankful to be busy, So that's the key.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
yeah.
Amen. So for everybody that's out there, if you would, if you could, if you want to, if you're live with us, let us have some comments after once we get started. If you like to know about real estate, but we're going to get grounded and say what we want to talk about. We want to talk about three really different avenues this evening. And that is one, if you want to become a realtor and get into the act of selling houses from a realtor standpoint. Two, if you want to start buying houses and flipping houses, that's buying them, fixing them up, and selling them. And three, if potentially you want to just invest in property for rental units. And both Jack and Todd have years of experience in doing this. So before we get started, you've seen both of them before on different panel discussions, but I'm going to let each of them talk a little bit about what they've done, how they've done it, how did they get it. Let's do it this way. What you've done, how did you first even get into thinking about going into real estate in the way that you're both in it? And then we'll get into some questions. So give the folks a little background on all that, if you would. Who wants to go first, Jack?
Yeah,
Jack,
that's fine. Once again, thanks for having me. What have I done? I've been in this business that I fell in love with over 30 years. I started in the Philadelphia market, and at that time, my goal was to continue to create a revenue stream that was one that I was used to, what I was doing before. I was always one that was in business somehow. But when I was getting ready to get married, my wife said, you got to have something that sort of is a little more grounded than just going out there and making things happen and not really having a clear definition as to how you're doing it. So I looked at some things that would give me the ability to work, and generate the income that I had been used to making, and not have a I don't want to say a supervisor, but not have no place I had to be at 9 to 5, and then pay me what I did. If I didn't do anything, don't pay me. But if I did, then I expected to be paid. The only place that I could find was real estate, and of course, I started in this industry, not knowing much about the industry, just knowing that people had to live somewhere. There's two things that they're going to do. Three, most importantly, first, they're going to live somewhere, they're going to eat, and then they're going to get dressed. So I really wasn't at that time in the food market, even though I enjoy cooking, and I wasn't in clothing. So real estate only made sense for me. And it has kept my family fed. It is really the backbone of what generates income for me. And how did I begin? Well, I just answered them both. I
All right.
began
Well
by
then,
looking as to how to make it happen. Yes, sir.
okay. And thanks, Jack. And we'll come back with some more detailed questions in a moment.
Sure.
And Todd, how about you?
Wow. So my journey has been relatively unique. I have prior to getting into real estate, I was a lawyer. I practiced law down in the D.C. area, and I'll never forget what actually fueled my passion for real estate. Back probably in maybe 1999, I read a book by a gentleman, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and reading that book literally fueled my passion for real estate. In DC, I bought my first rental property. I bought several homes in a very short period of time, and moved my family from DC back here to the South Jersey area where I actually grew up in this area. And I had a nice amount of money in my 401k at the time, and I pulled that money out and decided that I wanted to start my own business. That was in 2008 or 2009, and I haven't looked back. I haven't worked for anyone other than myself since 2008. Essentially, I buy residential properties and fix them up and flip them. And yeah, so that's
Amen. And get a little feedback. So if you're not talking, just put yourself on mute real quick. Um, I um I know Todd, and I've known Jack. I've known Jack longer than I've known Todd. But I remember when Todd was working in as a lawyer, and his transition from that into this whole house flipping. So I remember all that transition. It's good to see brothers that have started somewhere and where they get to. So both of these gentlemen have firsthand experience. So go ahead and put your questions in, and we'll be able to get you going. So I know Todd froze for a minute there, Jack, and I'm hoping that he's okay. But let's talk about real estate real
Okay.
quick. Let's talk about what's the process, because I saw there was a question there from Sister Cooper talking about what are some of the things you should do once you get your license. But let's talk about getting the license and what
Okay.
goes into getting the license first, and then what are some of the first things you should do once you get the license.
Okay, good. One of the first stage of getting your license is you have to go to school. There's a class that you take, which is the beginning of real estate. They teach you the one, twos, and threes of how to get your license, and that process is you can take it during the day. If you take it during the day, it's a 2 week course, 2 weeks from 9 to 5, literally. You get a half hour for lunch. They teach you the nuts and bolts of the real estate itself, not the mechanics of it, but actually the philosophy of it. And then you have to pass the test. And I generally tell the agents, if you don't pass the test the first time, that's fine, because vast majority of people don't pass it the first time. And if you don't pass the second time, don't panic, but there are some things that we can do to make sure that you have a better understanding of the exam. But the good news is it never changes. Once you understand the practices of real estate, it doesn't change. And it's new, but it doesn't change. Once you get your license, we then begin to teach you an industry, and we call you lethal
Now,
because you
how
literally have a license.
how much does it cost to get your real estate license?
It
Approximately.
it varies approximately about the class is probably somewhere around $300. The
Okay.
class itself to take the test, I think the test now is about $40 or $50 to take the test.
Okay. And if
Um,
and if you get licensed in Jersey, that doesn't mean you can be a realtor in Delaware or
Another state,
Pennsylvania, or
no.
does it? No. Okay.
No,
So
well, PA, if you have a PA license, PA is a reciprocal state. So from PA, you don't have to take a test to get your license in Maryland. you can be whatever you are in PA, you can be that in Maryland. To get your license in Delaware, if you're from PA, all you have to do is take the law, and then you can take the test. For Jersey, if you're licensed in PA, you can come to Jersey. All you have to take is the law, and then you can actually take the test
Mm.
for New Jersey.
Okay,
PA
so
really is
certain
more of a reciprocal state,
so certain
and
states are
Florida.
reciprocal. Certain
Yeah,
states are reciprocal states and others aren't.
that's
So
correct.
okay, so that's how you get your real estate license, and then
Mhm.
we'll come back to you in a minute about then what do you do, because we have a question from Brother Jordan that says once you pass the test, is there fees annually to keep the license active? Is there fees annually to keep an active license? That's just a
Yeah,
yes. That's just a yes or
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are fees, and they're more board fees,
Okay.
for the board that you're part of.
And then Todd, Brother Jordan also says, "Do you need a license?" I know the answer to this one, but I'm not the expert.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
what
no,
do you need a license to buy, fix up, and flip or rent?
you don't need a license to buy, fix up, or flip. Uh, Many people in my industry, they, put they start LLCs, and, they buy their properties in the name of their LLCs.
Now, if y'all remember, when we talked about legal and insurance aspect of a
Right.
business, where Todd Riddick Esquire was on, he defined the LLC was a limited liability company.
Ability company.
So
Yes.
that
Yes.
means if something happens, they can't come take your house.
Take your stuff. Right. Exactly.
It goes into
Exactly.
the company. So that's
Right.
the limited liability
Right.
company.
Right. Right.
So
And
so thank you.
as
So go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and as far as needing a license to rent, there are many townships and municipalities that require you to register your rentals. So it's really a town by town, a case by case thing
Okay.
for that.
Okay. All right. Great.
And if
So
now the other, and just to kind of really kind of drill it down a little bit more, there are people in my industry that flip houses that actually do the work themselves. And yes, you do need, contractor licenses and insurances to get in these houses and fix them up. But I don't do any of my own work, so I don't.
right. That's a question. That's a question that we're going to come back to. But
Okay.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
So Jack, we're come back to you. So
Okay.
you got your license, you paid your fees, you passed the test. Do you go out on your own and start finding houses, and how do you have to go with an agency? What do you do?
Yeah, but once you get your license, Real Estate Commission has established across the world that you have to be under a broker. So a broker, you have to put your license under a broker, and you can only be under one broker at a time in a state. And any income that you make, you must make it through and as a result of that brokerage. What I generally tell new agents is let's find out what is the philosophy that you're looking to work around as it relates to you and the real estate. Are you trying to do this part time, full time? Are you a weekend, what we call weekend warriors? Because those things and the time that you're going to put in really makes a difference as to what kind of money you're going to need. You're probably going to need, once you get your license, to be in the boards, to get everything set up and running, you're probably going to be somewhere around $1,100, give or take. That's what you're going to need to join the board and to do the other things that you're going to need to be able to participate in the industry. And then from there, it's teaching, it's learning, it's the process of learning how to be a professional, a real estate a professional. And the question becomes then, and people fall into slots. Some folk like listing, some people like working with buyers, some folk like working with rentals, and those things come out in time. But I tell people initially what's important is to try to find where what is more normal to you. What do you find yourself liking to do? Personally, I like it all, but I have a tendency to be a little stronger with buyers. And some people don't want to work with buyers, and I work with anybody, but a tendency to have a much more stronger appetite when it comes to buyers. But all of it works. Every aspect of it works.
Thank you for that. So Todd, you
Mhm.
go and buy your first house and you flip it.
Hmm.
You know, what are I want to ask Jack the same question because Jack has some experience here also. But what are some of the challenges or things that if somebody is saying, okay, I have this bit of cash, I'm gonna put my foot in the water. I'm gonna put my foot in the water um, and see if this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know,
The,
what are
yeah.
some of the things you got to watch out for, be
Right.
aware of, or what are some of the
The you
challenges that
know
you're going to
the
face?
the challenging part, assuming that you've been able to come up with your financing to purchase a property, the most critical part of the process is having a reliable team. And what I mean by that is having a good plumber, having a good electrician, having a good carpenter. If, as we all know, sometimes it can be very difficult finding good help. And, one of the reasons that I have been successful is I've been very, very fortunate to have a very, very good team. I've been using the same plumber for the last 10 years. I've been using the same electrician for the last 12 years. I've been using the same carpenter for the last 10 years or so. I mean, these are long-standing relationships that are vital. And if you get a bad contractor or a less than scrupulous contractor, good luck, because it can make your life very, very, very difficult, and you can lose a lot of money. So
Did you start off with those that plumber contractor
I,
and electrician?
again, literally through the grace of God, my team was, it just came together for me. And I was very loyal to them, and they were very loyal to me. And it's just been a very synergistic relationship all these years. Just built on trust. And you know, my guys, they can go to Home Depot and charge my credit card. I trust them. I trust these guys implicitly. So that is probably the one thing that I say is the most important part of the process is building a team. And then once you have that team, just showing them that you value them, and which means sometimes you got to not trying to be cheap and maybe paying them a little bit more. So yeah, that would be
Okay.
my
Okay.
biggest tidbit.
Let me ask you, Todd, do you have earphones in? Do you have earphones?
I
You have it?
don't. What is it? Is there echo or?
There's just a little bit of feedback. If you have some, that'll be great. Even if you have to
Okay.
run and get them. If you
Um,
don't, then that's okay also. We'll work it
I
out.
wouldn't even know where my
Okay.
son's got them
So
hidden somewhere.
when you're not talking, just put your computer on mute. Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
So Jack, same question coming back at you. What, in addition to what Todd just said, what are some of the things you have to watch out for? Because I know you flipped houses too when you're starting out doing that.
Well, I think one of the biggest start outs is knowing um, a little bit about everything. And I always tell people that's going to do investing, what do you know about, first of all, the area? What do you know about the house itself? I mean, and Todd and I was talking before we got started, and Willingboro, to me, was one of the most challenging markets because of the way the electric was set up in Willingboro. I mean, when they built those houses, they built them with carbon tube. And now when you put copper to that, that's a problem. The township doesn't take lightly to that. And in going into a house, being able to see a problem before they tear the wall open and know that it's a problem. One of the first things that I learned, because I started in the Philadelphia market, and a lot of Philadelphia plumbing had cast iron. Well, if it's cast iron waistline and that house has been vacant for a year or more, the second that you start running water through that cast iron, it's gonna crack. Trust me when I tell you. So you might as well take it out. Things like that. Um, not to scare you, but to make you aware. The Bible says that we should be forewarned so that we can be forearmed. So, and I would say anybody that's starting out, if you just have some money you want to invest, make sure you have, like Todd said, at least somebody with you that understands the rebuilding process, to see some of the things that you may not see with your naked eye, especially if you're starting out, because what can be a real advantage can turn real fast. I mean, a $10,000 profit can go right out the window if you have to put a line from the house to the street in, or if they have septic in Jersey. Septic is huge in Jersey. The well and septic, if you got to put a septic in, that's 25, $30,000 before you get started. So these are
Okay.
some of the things that really will be helpful to have somebody with you that understand, that can see what you may not be able to see.
Okay. And since while we still have you, we got another question from Sister Cooper Jack. And it's how do you
Okay.
go about vetting a broker? In other words, there's all these brokers out there. I got my
Sure.
license. I'm ready to
Yeah.
go. How do
Mhm.
I go about finding the right broker? And what are some of the things to look for?
Well, I always tell agents, first thing first, what do you want? I mean, what do you want? Everybody says they want education, and everybody gives education. But the question becomes, what do you want? If you have limited time, then you want to make sure you have an office that will allow you to have limited time and not push you to be there, to required to be there all the time, or whatever some of the requirements may be. For each office, they have different requirements. But the main thrust of it, I believe, is understanding what you want to do. Now, of course, they don't know, they just want to make a bunch of money in real estate and just make it go. And I sit down with them and I look at, okay, here's where you are. Here is what you have the potential to do per sale. Here is the time that it's going to take to do it. This is the time that you're going to have to put in. Here's one of the things, just a sidebar, that I show agents. I say, listen, it takes 1,000 hours in a thing to at least begin to understand it. It takes 10,000 hours in a thing to be good at it. So let's start by saying, how many hours do you have to put into learning the industry? And that generally clears up a lot of who's best for me, because some places I don't have to have as much discipline, and it doesn't cost me as much to be a part of of an office. That's why all the offices does well. Some does Everybody does well is based on that particular office's philosophy.
Okay.
Did
So
I
hopefully
cover
that
did I
answered
cover the
hopefully
question,
that
Rich?
answered your question, Sister Cooper.
If
Now
it
we're gonna
didn't, then touch on it, tell me a
we'll
little
ask
more.
just ask
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
But
We'll change
so
it.
Todd and Jack, we'll go to Todd first, and that is everybody knows that whether you're buying, selling, renting, the three words Lisa's always told me when we're buying another house: location, location, location. Now,
Mhm.
some locations that may look like the location may not be a gold mine. So, Todd, talk a little bit about, because I know you've done a lot of work in Willenboro. Also, talk a little bit about how you've farmed the locations which you flipped houses. And then, Jack, you follow up on the same question. I'll let you go first, Todd.
Sure. I think he's muted, Rich.
Sorry. Yeah, there we
Okay,
go.
I'm sorry. Mhm.
Location is pivotal. Um, kind of to piggyback on what Jack said. I mean, you have to know your market. I have been very deliberate in where I buy. I grew up here in South Jersey, Camden County, so I buy in Camden County. Um, I got started in doing real estate in Willingboro, flipping houses, and I've become an expert in that area. So so for the most part, I only buy in Camden County and Willingboro because those are the markets that I'm very, very, very familiar with. Um, and to unpack that a little bit more, as far as location, knowing, not to buy a house on a busy road. Although I recently bought a house on a busy road and I made a lot of money on it. So that's not all in this, that's a sort of an outlier, because the market is just so hot right now. People are willing to kind of overlook some things that they wouldn't look in a not so hot market. But knowing what the neighborhood around you looks like is important. You want to buy houses in neighborhoods that where people keep their properties up. So in that regard, location is pivotal.
Rich, I think you're muted as well.
I am. What we're doing when the other person is talking, whoever's not talking, we'll both mute, and then when we're getting ready to talk, we will unmute. So, Jack, you want to follow up on that same thing? Location.
Yeah, location is key. But one of the things that I always tell folk, I don't care how you do it, you got to look at those neighbors' houses and the house across the street. Because if you put too much money in this house and the neighbors on both sides are not keeping their houses up, I'm telling you, most people don't just stay in their house, they do come outside. And it's important that you not only look at the location, but you look at those neighbors on both sides and directly across the street. And I also teach the agents that a listing, if a house just sold, the houses on both sides and the one directly across the street is going to sell within the next 18 months. So that's a great place to market. And of course, that was a little sidebar, but literally, it's important to not only look at the location, but you got to look at those neighbors, because I've seen people put money in properties, and we just sold one. They put money in properties, but the house next door was a mess, and I probably would not have pointed them to purchase that one and try to get out what they were going to try to get. So it's important to look at what's going on around the property.
Thanks for that, Jack. I've always been told, I mean, my daddy told me this when I was first starting to buy houses. You don't want to buy the most expensive house in the wherever you're buying it, because everybody else's house value is going to go up and yours may come down, but it's probably not going to go up. So don't buy the most expensive house in wherever
That's true.
you're living.
Even though this market does dictate a whole lot of changes in this market, and it's not going to last forever. I mean, we've been in
Yeah.
this almost 2 years. We probably got, another 6 months, maybe a year, and this one will change.
I read in the Wall Street Journal today that 6.1 million houses were sold in 2022, the most ever. Because everybody with the pandemic, they wanted to get out of those apartments and condos and get more open space because they couldn't go anywhere, and they want to diversify, but mainly to get their own space as opposed to being in common area. We got a few questions here, so let's hit these one by one. I think the first one's for you, Todd. Is, do you recommend going through an auction to purchase a house to flip? You're on mute, Todd.
Oh, I'm muted. I'm sorry. Am I unmuted? Okay. That can be tricky. So when you buy houses at the auction, and quite frankly, the auctions were all sort of closed down. The auction houses have been closed down over the last few months because of COVID. But would I make my first house flip a auction purchase? I probably would not. And the reason why is you don't know what you're getting. Typically with the houses you buy at the auction, you can't get in those houses you basically have to buy them sight unseen. You don't know if there's someone living in the property. And it just could become it can become very challenging, especially for a first flip. So for a first flip, I would advise against not buying at the auction. However, right now, again, is not a good time to buy at the auction, because all those houses that have been being held up over the last year or two are now, starting to be auctioned off, and it's a bloodbath at the auction, and people are paying, close to retail value for, houses at the auction. So, kind of to piggyback on what Jack said, I would wait. I would wait a little bit before I bought a house at the auction, just because it's not an ideal time.
What would be a first house to flip if you're just getting into it, Todd?
Yeah. Um, I think a good house to flip would be a bank owned, what they call a REO property, or real estate owned property, or a bank owned home. Those are typically, your Fannie Mae properties, your HUD properties, um, and depending on the capital that you have, or the financing that you have, will dictate, how large of a project that you can undertake. Again, kind of what Jack said, I would strongly encourage you to partner up with someone who knows what they're doing, um, um, because you can lose a lot of money if you make a misstep.
Okay, thanks, Todd. We're coming to you, Jack, with a question from Brother Scott. And Brother Scott says, you can see it there, Jack. He said, I'm a new agent in Indiana. How do I attract, find leads other than what my managing broker feeds me? That's a good question. That's a good.
Yeah, I the first thing I did when I came, and here's what they tell you to do, and then here's what I would tell you to do. How's that? The first thing that they generally tell you to do is make sure everybody that you know is in that your family, friends know that you're in the real estate business, and I agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And where you live, make sure the folk in your area know that you're in the business, and you can do it the old-fashioned way of just hi, how you doing? I'm in the business, or you can do it the professional way. Get some cards with your picture and mail them to your neighbors. That looks a little more professional. It doesn't have to cost you a whole lot, and that can be done. The next thing that you can do, what I did when I first came into business, I realized that I didn't know enough people to really make any money. I just didn't know enough people. So, and I started in the Philadelphia market. I started putting ads in the Sunday paper, just a little small ad in the Sunday paper. And they had a lot, and they have now the bond programs and things of that nature. It made the phones ring. Once you get the phones ringing, you start making some money. Now you can reinvest. You have to invest in the industry. And if you have to do something. There's a leads that you can buy. There's also phone lists that you can buy that you can begin to make phone calls, and that actually will make your skills a lot better. But you have to purchase, in my opinion, you have to spend some money to make some
Making
money. If you live off of the office's leads, then they're going to take lion's share, or at least half of the money that you make. Now that may be fair, but I believe that you have to put some money in to get a little bit out, and not a lot, just enough so that you can begin to get some what I call work.
That was a great question. God bless you, Brother Scott. We wish you God's many blessings as you venture on into the world of real estate. If you have another question, please let us know. You all are asking some really, very, very good questions. So keep them coming. All right, gentlemen. I'm gonna let you talk about rental property. We only have we got about 10 minutes left. We're gonna let you talk about rental property and your experience with rentals, and see if anybody else has any more questions on flipping and general real estate. But talk a little bit about rentals, what you should be looking for, how you go about doing it, some of the same pitfalls that you have to be concerned about. I'll let Jack go first.
As far as purchasing rentals, the philosophy is the same. How many units is in this rental? If it's more than one unit, it's usually better, depending on where it is and what you have. One bedroomers would not bring as much as two bedroomers. In financing, you can use upwards of 70% of the rental income to purchase that property, to qualify for the purchasing of that property. A lot of investors, and Todd may have his own feel on this, they prefer single families because they're generally easier to fill and easier to sell when the time comes. Even though multifamilies, I haven't had any problem selling any of them. But just overall, if you're going to buy a lot of them, single families is probably the place that you'll get a good return, and you'll get tenants. The key with tenants is to screen them. Just because they have the money doesn't necessarily mean they're going to pay you next month. They just have some money now because they have a problem. Next month, you could have a problem. So I generally tell them to screen the tenants. And one of the things that I used to do, especially with a person that was pretty close and I felt pretty good about them, I would, accidentally be at their house today. Just ring the bell. Listen, we've been talking. I was in the area, wanted to meet you. Would you allow me to use your restroom? And if they don't know you're coming, you're going to see what they're getting ready to bring to your place, because where they are is coming. That's coming. So you
Todd,
like that one?
you off mute yet, Todd?
Sorry about that. Sorry. Um, well, so rental properties for me, I let me kind of back up a little bit. Several years ago, about 10 years ago, I purchased probably 5 or 6 rental properties. Actually, more than 5 or 6 years. Probably right before the big crash, I purchased some rental properties and made some mistakes in that regard. I purchased these very expensive multifamily dwellings and single family homes, and the market tanked, and I kind of had, I got my butt kicked. So I stayed out of that rental market for quite some time. Now I view rentals as vital to my real estate portfolio. I'm 51 years old. I'm looking at retirement soon. So, I need to prepare for my future and prepare for, residual income and cash flow. And that's what rental properties are for me, are a vehicle to get residual income, when I'm 60, 60 something years old, and, looking to retire. I have money, coming in every month. So when I look at rentals, it's just a numbers game. How much am I going to be able to rent this place out? If I do get a mortgage on it, I look at what my monthly payment's going to be. I look at the expenses that go into running that property every month, and if I don't have a certain amount of cash flow in that property, then that property is not a good property for me. But if the numbers make sense, I will I'll buy the property, and I'll try to limit the amount of money that I put into the property, because it is a rental. And yeah, that's pretty much how I approach the rental market. I think you're muted, Rich.
Question from Sister Cooper there. Is it better to purchase a rental property with a tenant in place or not? And I think it depends, would be
It
my
depends.
answer. I'm not a real estate guy, but I would think it
Depends. It
depends.
absolutely depends. It depends on what the tenant is paying. It depends on if that tenant is a good tenant. It's always good to buy what I call a turnkey property. But to the extent that you have the opportunity to get your own tenant in there who's paying a lot more money, then yeah, I would opt to, before you buy that property, make sure that it's vacant, and then you can kind of, I view every rental property as its own business entity. So that property has to, I need, as the owner, I need to maximize maximize the potential of that property. So if maximizing the potential is getting rid of the old tenant, then that old tenant has to go. What about you, Jack?
I agree. I always prefer getting my own tenants because a lot of times the tenants that's there and that's been there, they have a different feeling about their property. They probably, in a lot of cases, they had opportunity to buy it and couldn't. So now you have hurdles that you have to deal with them. So absolutely, if it makes sense, then of course you take a look at it. But always, if I have a chance to put tenants in, it's always stronger than, in my opinion, than having someone that's been there because usually their rents are low, and when you increase them, you just start a new problem. Yeah.
Amen. Amen to that. Well, we still got some more questions coming, so I'm gonna hit you with this one, Jack. And you all asking some very, very good questions.
You really are.
Brother Scott came back, said, any suggestions for good books that will help me in my real estate career?
Absolutely. If you're looking to, and depending on what facet of real estate you're talking about being, if you just want to be you want to sell real estate on a daily basis, buy and sell, then anything that will teach you the buying and selling aspect of it. The book that I really liked the most, and Todd said it, was Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because what it did, it gave a brand new philosophy to the industry. The other thing that I think is extremely important, and this is the first thing that I start with agents, and that is the mental aspect of the business. The question becomes, if you have two agents in the same office getting the same information, one does well, the other one doesn't do well, what's the problem? Well, it's not the water that they're drinking, and it's definitely not the food that they're eating, it's their mindset. So the first thing that I do with agents, the moment that they come into the office, we go through 3 courses of mindset so that you're thinking as a professional and you're running your business as a professional. But Rich Dad Poor Dad is an excellent book to give you philosophies of real estate. There are several others that I've read, and they're probably escaping my mind at this time. But if they want to send some information to the church, I'll gather a few that would really be helpful
Well,
in that vein.
one fundamental thing with regard to anything that you want to learn more about is, studies have shown that if you read one book a month on any subject, one book a month on any subject, after 3 years, you'll be an expert on that subject. If you read
Hmm.
a different book a month on any subject, so you just have to be consuming
Right.
um, whatever you can get your hands on,
Yeah.
and just stay in it, stay in it, stay in it, and then you will come to know much more about that subject than most people.
Just to add in, I think one of the problems, especially in today, for whatever reason, a lot of folk don't want to read. They want to listen,
They
and
will.
listening is fine, but a lot of people just don't want to read, and that really is, in my opinion, one of the fundamental things that you just have to do. Like you said, one a day,
One a month at least.
one a month. Yeah.
Um, now, Brother Jordan asked this question. I know Todd, the lawyer here. I'm going to answer this and let Todd answer it after me. But have you experienced any issue with tenants not having to pay due to COVID protections? I've known many people that have houses that are rented, that the folks that were in their houses weren't working and they couldn't put them out. But Todd,
Yeah,
I'll let you have a more legal.
yes, that is, yes, that has been the tenor of or the climate that we've been operating in, is that COVID has basically been catastrophic for landlords. The government did try to come in and kind of help landlords out. But it's just created a lot of issues. Right now the courts are actively trying to get through their landlord tenant dockets, and I mean, there's, if I remember correct, there's like 50 in New Jersey alone. There's like 50,000, some absolutely outrageous number of landlord tenant cases right now. I actually bought a property in Willingboro that a woman was living in, and she promised she was going to move, and the pandemic hit, and it literally took me 10 months to get her out and $13,000 in legal fees. Absolutely insane.
Wow.
So,
well, that's just the environment that we're in right now. But hey, we're running out of time here. We really appreciate all the questions from everybody that joined us, so much so that we may have to do a part 2 of this. I really appreciate everybody's questions that have come in.
Rich, can I share my contact information with people if people want to reach out? And I do some coaching, from helping people out to get into the industry. So if anyone ever wants to hit me up or has any questions, I'm very much local. I live here in Cherry Hill, but I'll give my phone number. Is that okay, Rich? Or
what about an email?
Email. Okay, I'll give my email. All right, my email is, and please don't laugh at me, I have an AOL account. So my email is T as in terrific, R as in rabbit, I as in igloo, D as in David, the number 9, the number 0 at AOL.com. TRID90 @AOL.com.
Okay. Thanks, Todd. Hey, we really appreciate you all coming in and listening in. Like I said, so much that we may have a part 2 of this. I know we have some sisters in real estate within the church that have been very successful. Also, we weren't able to get them on this evening, but maybe we'll get them on another time. But just know, real estate is an avenue that many people have been very successful in. Certainly, the Lord would ask us and expect us to have more than one stream of income, so we're not just dependent on one thing when something else goes wrong. Now, whether that's real estate or investing or a side business or another business, there's a lot of different ways you can get there. But we at the Business Professionals Association are here to try to provide you with some various things that you can look at from a business standpoint, whether it's entrepreneurial or corporate. And we thank you for taking the time to join us. And we look forward to providing you with some new things in this year of 2022. But God bless you. God keep you all. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you, Jack. It was good seeing you. Thank you.
Man, we're going to talk. We'll talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all hold on for a minute. We're going to end the show. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, man.